Alright, hey everyone, AG51 Goose here, and I just thought I would do a couple of takeoffs in a P-51 and a P-47, seeing how my squad started flying some of the prop planes, and some of the guys aren't sure how to do it, and a little bit of issues. So I'm not saying that the way I'm going to show you here is the best way to do it or the only way to do it. It's just this is how I do it. So this is the P-51, this is the 25 variant. So one of the things is that if you pull your stick back all the way, that locks your tail wheel. I know some of the guys use that, but I myself, I don't use it, because what I find happens is I don't look at my airspeed and all of a sudden my nose wants to come off, but my tail doesn't, so it kind of screws me up. I like seeing my tail kind of lift up, and when your tail lifts up, you know you're at the flying, or going to be at your flying point. Now, another thing you can do here is when you get yourself set up, I mean, if you don't like to use an F2 view or an outside view to see if you're lined up, you can see that my plane is actually pointing a bit to the right here. You can see that the right side of the strip is a little bit narrower than it is in the left. So what I like to do when I go to take off is just zoom out. I don't, you know, well, that's full. I usually zoom out a little bit. It just helps you see the edge of the road or the side of the strip. So of course that's what you're going to watch, and what you're going to be looking for is the differences. Like if one side starts getting narrower than the other side, then you know that you have to move over a bit. Now, one of the nice things with the P-51 is that under slow speed the rudder does have some authority. It will cause the plane to turn, so that's why I say you really don't need to lock the tail wheel. So in this case, because the prop is spinning to the left, the plane torque is going to want to pull the plane to the left, so obviously you're going to have to give it right rudder to try and keep her going down the strip. I think this plane's only got about 60% fuel in it, so yeah, it's going to be pretty easy to get off the ground. It's not very heavy, but if you do have a lot of weight on the plane, if your tanks are full and you're carrying bombs and rockets and stuff, and you got a lot of heavy weight, you might want to consider using the combat flaps the P-51 has, which, as you can see, they come down a little bit, not a whole lot, but they do help you out. Alright, so what I'm going to do here, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to put my brakes on, I'm going to bring my power up. Okay, I'm going to let my brakes off. And right now I'm just watching the edge of the runway to see which side is getting more or less. I got about a quarter of my right rudder in. I'm going to add some more rudder, increase in power, pull in more right rudder. Okay, now I'm going to pull gently back on the stick, and now I'm going to let her kind of go level. I'm going to bring my gears up. I can let my rudder off, and now we're just going to let her pick up some speed here as our gears come up before we before we start our climb. Okay, so we're at 200 knots, so we're good. We can start a bit of a climb here, and we're off. As you can see, nothing to it. Pretty simple, quite easy. So now what I'm going to do is I'll hop over and we'll do that same thing off in the P-47. That plane is heavier than the P-51, so she can be a little more tricky to take off. Alright, so I'm going to be back with the P-47. Alright, so we're here with the P-47, and we need to taxi out. Now the nice thing with the P-47 is it actually has a lever to lock the tail wheel, so you don't have to pull back on the stick, so that makes it a little bit nicer. The other thing with the P-47 though is he doesn't have under low speed, his rudder doesn't have a lot of authority. He doesn't have as much authority as what the P-51 has, that's for sure. They must have this. Okay, yeah, the tail wheel is locked. I kind of figured that, because when the tail wheel's not locked and you're taxiing and you touch your brake, it swings that way on you, and then you go to stop it from turning and it swings the other way on you. It's a real pain to taxi. But you know, if you play around with it, you do get used to it. I usually like to taxi with a full turn. So one of the things I wanted to show here, so what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to unlock our tail wheel. Okay, so if this knob down here is back, your tail wheel's unlocked. All right, so we got our unlock. So one of the things that happens, you see how it's turning and we stop? You see how the tail wheel there stays turned? Okay, now if you go to start taking off, you lock your tail wheel right now. I do believe that the wheel will stay turned, right? And you see how the wheel still turns? So now when we take our feet off the brake after we give it power, guess what's going to happen? It's going to start turning to the right before that tail wheel straightens out. Okay, so one of the things you want to try and do with this thing is to get your tail wheel straight when you line yourself up on the runway. And the way to do that, of course, is you have to get the plane to go a little bit straight for a couple of feet before you try and lock that wheel into place. So see, now if you take a look there, you know, she's kind of straight, but you know, look how I got the airplane pointed. You know, so that's not going to be a very good takeoff for me. But we're going to go with this just because I'm being brave here. So, and again, I zoom my view out a little bit so I can see the edge of the runways a little better, and you can definitely see how little space I have on my left side compared to how much space I have over on my right side. Okay, so I already knew I got to go right as this thing starts rolling. So probably what's going to happen is I'm probably going to have to use my brake, my right brake, a tap on my right brake to get the nose to go over that way, because the rudder doesn't have enough authority. So we'll give her a shot, see what happens. All right, bringing the power in. All right, gonna let her start rolling. I'm gonna kick my rudder full right, a shot on the right brake here. That was 4 shots on the right brake to get it to straighten out. There we go. Coming up, full power. Right, got a little rudder authority now with the airplane. I can turn the plane with the rudder. Little right rudder, about a quarter of my right rudder. And as you can see, this plane is eating up way more space than what the P-51 does to take off, because she's so much heavier. All right, and we're off. Gear coming up. And just try and keep her at the top of the trees until she gets her speed up. If you pull up too much, of course you'll stall it because you're right at stall speed, right? Now, one of the things I should have mentioned before I took off that I didn't is I should have closed my calling flaps before taking off. So as you can see now, I'm closing them. You can see that they're now in the closed position on the front. And if I understand correctly, they say to keep them closed the whole time you're flying because it disrupts the wing or the wind flow over the wings for some reason. So that was my understanding, was the best way to fly these things, with that off. So as you can see, they're not really all that hard to take off. They go quite simple, you know. And then of course, once you get them up and flying, you know, they fly quite nice. They're quite nice to fly with, that's for sure. Okay, so this P-47 was the later model. So let's go ahead and jump into the early one and see if there's any difference with that one. So that was the, okay, so. All right, so here we are in the earlier version of the P-47. And I wasn't sure, but yeah, now that confirms that the P-47, you get, I put my flaps down, I get, so it might be the way I have them set up, because I can see on the arms, see I only have full up or full down, but you can see the notches on the arm, so I'll have to reset mine. So again, the P-47, I mean, if you put 2 500-pound bombs on this thing and load it with fuel, you are very, very heavy. And you're probably going to want to use some flaps to get her in the air. Alright, so again, same thing. Zoom it out a little bit so you can watch the sides of the runway. Bringing in the power. Alright, going to let her roll. Kicking in some right rudder. Still looking pretty good. Alright, going to full power. You're letting the right rudder off. Oh, going to kick in a little left and get close to the right side there. You can see it. Okay, a little more right. She's starting to fly. Alright, and gear up. And I'm going to just not pitch the nose up too much because we don't want to stall. We want to get her speed up. You know, make sure you just have enough altitude to clear the trees. Alright, my gear should be up now, and as you can see, our speed is slowly increasing. There we go. Now we can start our nice kind of gentle climb. I just say piece of cake. Not very hard to take off in these birds. Again, I didn't close my calling flaps. I should have, but so hell, I'm trying to keep the video short. Alright, so here we are. We're on the runway. This is P-47 early version. And I got 3 500-pound bombs on her. Alright. Alright, so same thing. At least this time I got my cowling flaps closed. Alright, bringing the power up. Alright, gonna let her roll. Kicking in about half my right rudder at this point. Increasing my power. Bringing her up to full. Letting the right rudder off a little bit. As you can see, we're going to the right side, so we'll let it off some. A little left rudder now to keep me on the airfield here. Oop, a little more right. A little more right. Come on. Don't disappoint. Yeah, we're off of it, but we're committed now. We don't have a choice. We gotta go. So you can see with this weight how much harder it is to get her out, off in the air. I'm surprised I didn't hit a tree there. So one of the things you can do to avoid that, if you really want, so what we'll do is I'll grab another airplane and set it up. Alright, so here we are lined up again. We are in the early version of the P-47, again with 305-pound bombs on her. But this time what we're going to do is I'm going to put the flaps down this time is what I'm going to do. Alright. So, right, here we go. Bringing up the power. Rolling. Increase my power. And give her a little bit of right rudder. Again, watch the sides of the runway. A little more right rudder. Alright, going full power. Now we're getting to the left side. Alright, gonna put my flaps down. See how the nose comes up right away? Or pushes down right away? Alright, gonna let her roll. You see it shaking there, it's because I'm on the verge of stalling. Alright, gonna bring my gear up, flaps up. As you can see, I got off the ground a lot sooner with using the flaps. Oh, come on. And I did that once before, took out the flaps, and my wingman pulled up beside me and said, hey, take a look at your wing. And I hit the button to put the flaps up, and you can see there they didn't come up. I did that before, so if you do use the flaps, a good thing to check. You know, just look at your wing and make sure that they actually came up. But as you can see, when I used the flaps, I got off the ground a lot quicker. So if you have a heavy load, I highly recommend that you use some flaps to get off the strip. It'll definitely help, right? It's the same with the P-51. If you're really heavy, use some flaps. It just makes it a lot easier. Alright, so I'm going to say goose out for now, and we'll see you guys on the next videos.